Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the Daily Compliance News. The Daily Compliance News is an offering of the Compliance Podcast Network. December 2, 2019, the Will Corruption Kill Off Venice edition. So we'll start with that story as reported in the FT as Venetians float autonomy to save their city. Of course, autumn's floods were the worst in half a century for Venice, and if you've seen the pictures, you know how horrific the flooding is. The corruption angle comes in with the Moses Gate. The Moses Gate was a water barrier that was supposed to protect Venice from flooding. It was scheduled to be finished in 2011 and cost approximately $1.5 billion. Well, apparently now they're up to $3.5 billion, and they still do not have a date for the finishing of it. The biggest problem is corruption, and several high-ranking officials have been convicted of bribe-taking and money laundering, but the flood prevention system is still not working and still not ready to go. Of course, the second problem is the corruption around the cruise ships, which go into a jurisdiction just outside the city of Venice, but cause significant flooding in Venice. So it's not clear how much Venice will be damaged permanently from this flood, but one can only conclude that the massive corruption around both of these issues, the Moses Gate and the cruise ships, has put a serious dent in the future of Venice. Next up, from the New York Times, the plunge in 3 Hong Kong stocks offers a cautionary tale about corporate governance and regulatory oversight in the crossroads for global finance. The ups and downs of the stock market have been fairly spectacular lately, and it really leads to a series of questions that every company should be asking. Bankers across the globe are asking the questions about whether, with the disruptions and riots, Hong Kong can continue to keep its position as one of the world's leading financial hubs. Obviously, the danger for people living there simply is in and of itself great, but the fallout and the continued fallout and what the Chinese government does to the independence of Hong Kong as a regulatory center, a financial center, will be critical going forward. Our next two stories are around risk. The first one comes from the Washington Post, and it really poses the question, is weather risk a big risk, or rather climate change, a big risk or a business opportunity? And I think with all such questions, the answer is, of course, both. The storms that have raged across the United States over the past couple of years have damaged places which typically were not damaged by such storms. And depending on where your business sits, if you're on the Gulf Coast, you're cognizantly aware of hurricanes, but also flooding. The 500-year floods that have devastated Houston over the past 3 years were a result of rains coming from the north, not hurricanes from the south. So it's a big risk and a business opportunity, and every compliance practitioner needs to think about that going forward. And finally, our final story about risk comes from the Wall Street Journal. It's entitled Elon Musk and the Dying Art of the Big Bet. In the age of big data, Tesla's stated approach to market research, ignoring it altogether, does seem reckless. And this is of course, revolves around the recently released Cybertruck by Tesla. While it did have a disastrous opening preview, there are apparently, or at least Tesla claims, some 200,000 orders for the truck. Whether, of course, that's true or not, it's unclear at this point. But it really speaks to the issue of risk management, the study of risk, and risk mitigation. If you don't study risk, you certainly can't manage it. And if you can't manage it, well, your company's going to be held in abeyance by it going forward. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks for listening.